Morning. My first question is, thanks for the number. Why was this a number that we didn't have the past couple days?
Yeah.
And then this modeling is based off of, you said 75% of people taking advantage of the program. If 75% of people, if 25% of people aren't taking advantage of the program, do you consider that a flaw in the program? Would you consider the program a success of that number? If you can talk us through this.
Sure. So look, we have to make an assumption about how many people take advantage of the program in order to provide this preliminary estimate. The reason that we chose 75% is that it's broadly speaking in line with the take-up rate of the most similar education department initiative that we could find.
Everyone who received the $125 refund is eligible for the second payment of $200. You're also eligible for the $200 payment if you received Social Security benefits in 2022. However, you cannot be claimed as a dependent on an income tax return. If you're eligible, you receive the money either by direct deposit or by paper check. It mostly depends on how you filed this year. However, paper checks for both payments have been delayed because of supply chain issues. And if you have direct deposit, your $125 refund should already be in your account. The $200 should be ready Thursday, and paper check could arrive as early as this weekend with both payments. State officials began printing around 50,000 checks per day this week. A total of 1.7 million checks are set to be mailed out by early October and should arrive by October 1st. Now, many lawmakers are now allocating billions of dollars towards new funding programs. The new goal is to provide struggling Americans with additional help during this time. However, there may be a stricter eligibility requirement for this relief, so make sure to watch until the end to learn how to receive it. Here is some exciting news. The governor, Glenn Youngkin, wants to set aside nearly $400 million for another round of tax relief. It's among the items expected to be included in a package of budget recommendations to be included in Youngkin's and VA. The governor will propose assigning $397 million to a fund designated specifically for taxpayer relief. He described it as a starting point to support tax cuts in the near future and later in his term. Youngkin told reporters this week, this is a down payment in what I truly believe will be a much broader package of tax reduction. Those comments come as roughly $4 billion in tax relief approved by lawmakers earlier this summer is still being implemented. The General Assembly increased the standard deduction, cut the state's portion of the grocery tax, and authorized one-time rebates for eligible taxpayers, among other things. The state plans to do with the money. The governor responded, "The right thing to do is return unplanned revenues to taxpayers. It's not our money, it belongs to the hardworking taxpayers of Virginia." However, Virginia is not the only state that is pushing for more relief to the residents. Taxpayers in over a dozen states are getting refunds this year, as both Republican and Democratic state leaders seek to spend down budget surpluses and help residents cope with inflation. Although some of the refunds are required by decades-old laws and that limit the growth of state spending, Indiana residents have also begun seeing some relief at the pump with falling gas prices. That relief will be increased in September when one of the gas taxes drops. The Indiana Department of Revenue recently published a gasoline tax calculation for September. The calculation shows the rate starting September 1st will be 24 cents a gallon, down from 30 cents per gallon in June.
Students who are about to take out new loans, what should the message to them be about whether their loans could be forgiven in the future? Does the White House have an obligation to emphasize that this could very well be a one-time thing since they're not taking out additional loans?
I would say two things. Number one, this is going to be a one-time thing in terms of the blanket relief. This is an authority that is conditional on an emergency, as I said, and the president believes that this relief is warranted in this instance, coming out of the pandemic and as we transition back into repayment. It is not the kind of authority that you can use over and over again. But what I would say to that student is that these income-based repayment reforms that are also part of this proposal are designed to help people who go to school and then end up having lower income, middle income jobs going forward. Remember, we had some examples in the fact sheet that we put out alongside the proposal showing that, for example, somebody making $30,000 or $40,000 a year after they have some debt, the income-based repayment reforms represent a savings of $1,000, $1,500 a year or more, depending on their exact circumstances. So it was really important to the president that this package of proposals not
the nation's roads, highways, bridges, railroads, ports, airports, clean water systems, high-speed rail, internet, the biggest investment in America since President Eisenhower's Interstate Highway Act. We got a little help. We did get some help from some Republicans passing the bill, and I'm thankful for that. But the truth is, there's a lot more Republicans taking credit for a bill that they actually voted against. You see it all over America. Right here in Maryland, you got a Republican Congress named Andy Harrison. Now, old Andy's out there touting funding for a key dredging project in his district that he voted against. It's happening all over. Maybe he'll, as they say in Southern Delaware, maybe the boy will get some religion. Look, folks, we passed the Chips and Science Act, a groundbreaking law. We're going to once again manufacture semiconductors as we invented that power everything in our lives right here in America. This law will create tens of thousands of construction jobs, bring billions of dollars in investment to America, and revitalize American manufacturing. But look, folks, it means we're going to build the future in America. With American workers, in American factories, producing American-made products.
Let's now bring in Greg Ip, the chief economics commentator at the Wall Street Journal, to break down more of Powell's rhetoric and speech from today. Greg, you heard what Steve just kind of laid out in terms of the scene setter out there in Jackson Hole and what exactly was the primary driver for the downside moves here. Is this a scenario where the Fed's credibility maybe is no longer in question, or do you think that there are still questions surrounding whether Powell has the resolve to conquer this inflation issue?
Well, I think the fact that it was a compressed, concise speech and that every word of it was clear and unidirectional. We're going higher, even if there's a recession. The power of that statement and the very concise nature might have just been enough to kind of like break the spell on the markets. This belief that, as Steve said, has been completely contradicted by every Fed speaker in the last few weeks, that they were going to pivot. And maybe that's it. Maybe it's because they had to hear it from Powell's lips that this was not going to happen. That said, Dom, there's something about this that puzzles me. It was obvious to most of us that the bond market got this a while ago. And in fact, if you look at the Fed funds futures, there's almost no movement in the probabilities in the next few months. They're still looking at about 60% for 75 next month. What I don't understand is why it took so long for the equity guys to wake up from their dream, right? I mean, never mind why did the Dow drop 1,000 points today? Why was it up as many thousand points as it was in the last few weeks?
Oh, and not just Greg, if I might follow up on that, Greg, the reason why I want to do that is because we've been showing viewers and listeners on SiriusXM, what we've been showing is the entire slate of Treasury note and yields and all the information that we've seen from price action. And Greg, the thing that struck me about today's action was the complete lack of action. Forget about the spreads or anything else. I mean, just look at the 2-year note, the 5-year note, the 10-year note, and the 30-year long bond actually dropped, right? And maybe you could make the argument there that there's a little bit more of a long-term economic slowdown fear, so longer-term bonds are being bought up for safety. But what was it about the bond market that maybe the equity markets didn't see coming?
Breaking news.